Hello and shalom, shalom. Welcome to Bethariel Wednesday Bible study on the book of Deuteronomy. Today we'll be looking at some more of these great laws concerning our relationship with others and how we ought to always keep a good thought for our neighbors. We will also further correlate some of these laws in the Mosaic law system, that is, with those of the law of the Messiah that we find in the letters of the New Testament. Both these laws are very similar, for they are coming from the same author. We will also look at the laws concerning the one individual that is much closer to a neighbor, that is the spouse. We will look into those difficult and so complicated laws about divorce. Moses opens up the subject by presenting a very complex case, like every divorce case is, and he especially brings out the abuses behind divorce. We will learn that the law does not at all promote or condone divorce, but regulates it. Yeshua clearly said it. Moses, he said, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And so the case presented to us is filled with great principles to apply to every other cases of separation. Now, before this, let us take a question. This question is about forgiveness, something that is often lacking in divorce cases. Sharon will read the question for us.
Shalom. In Matthew chapter 18, we read that Simon Peter asked Yeshua a question that many of us have asked ourselves and even asked God over and over. How many times am I responsible to forgive someone? Isn't there a limit? I guess Peter thought that 7 times was surely being generous, but Yeshua said we are to forgive 70 times 7. What does this actually mean, and what might these numbers represent? Thank you.
Well, thank you for this question. Let us first read Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 to 22, where Yeshua speaks of forgiveness and when and how many times should we forgive. So it says, then Peter, in verse 21, then Peter came to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. So the question is, how often shall we forgive? Is there a limit of the number of times? Peter limited it to 7 times, but why 7? And where did he get this number from? He must have referred to what Yeshua just previously in Luke chapter 17, verse 4, where he says, and if he, your brother, that is, sins against you 7 times a day, and 7 times in a day returns to you, saying, I repent, you shall forgive. So Peter, like many of us, must have used selective hearing and chose to register only part of what Yeshua said. It is not 7 times in total, but 7 times a day. That is what Yeshua said. That is all the time, every day, every hour, every minute. And this is what the Messiah stresses in Matthew 18, using the number 70 times 7, which is really 490 times. But why use this number of 70 times 7? By using this number, Yeshua extends the use of forgiveness until he comes back. How do we come to this conclusion? The figure 70 times 7 refers to the prophecy of Daniel, which was very well known at that time. The prophecy of Daniel, found in Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 to 27, gives a full account of the 2 comings of the Messiah. He even gives a date of the first coming. This is why many expected the Messiah at the time of Jesus. It was then when the first Jewish false Messiah, the first one, also appeared, and even Josephus refers to Daniel's prophecies to explain this rise of false messiahs. However, the second coming of the Messiah is also prophesied, and it is in the way Daniel spoke about it that will help us to understand what Yeshua meant when he said 70 times 7. The whole prophecy is made of 490 years, of not consecutive years, but it is divided into different parts. We've gone through 483 years, that is. These have run out. There are 7 years left to these prophecy that is, which correspond to the 7-year tribulation times, which is about to begin, I believe, very soon, seeing what is happening in the world. So for now, let us just read verse 24, the first verse of Daniel's prophecies, where we find this number 70 times 7.
70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy.
So 70 times 7, Shavurim Sheverim, is 70 times 7 times. And so it is here where we find this number, which leads us to the second coming of the Messiah, which will bring us to the end of sin and to the everlasting righteousness. So when Yeshua used this number, which was well known at the time, he was simply saying, forgive until I come back. 7 is the number of spiritual perfection and completeness. We remember that in Hebrew, 7 is Sheva, from the root Sava, which means to be full, to be satisfied. And we see in the list of Daniel 9:24, we have 7 prophecies which will be fulfilled in 70 times 7 years when Yeshua comes back. So, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and how often shall I forgive him? Again, we consider Jesus' answer, until he comes back. We are to keep forgiving until then. So let's not count, but just forgive. We're expected, in fact, to forgive each time, just like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, the chapter of love, in verse 5. He says, love keeps no record of wrongs. This is, by the way, an accounting term, but we are not called to be accountants, but loving brothers, to love, that is, our brothers and sisters instead, and covering their transgressions with the love of God. Let's now return to our study of Deuteronomy. Many of the passages we will look are not in your handout, but you can add them. So this class I gave at Bible school and for many years, but since then many things were or are added. So the subject on divorce is on page 19 on top when we get there. So we are in chapter 24 of Deuteronomy, where we find these laws that are concerned with the proper distribution of goods. The principle behind these laws is found actually in Exodus 16:18, which runs actually through the law. There God first provided the manna. He ordered that everyone should take a definite amount for each person. And the conclusion was, see what the verse says,
He who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need.
So this is what is at the core of these laws. Behind these principles, the law sees everyone equal, regardless of their social or economic status. And with this principle as a foundation, Deuteronomy 24 is concerned with the proper distribution of goods, also bringing every Israelite to always be considerate of the people they lived in, okay, even and especially in their absence. Let us read verse 20 to 21 of Deuteronomy 24, where we are given 2 great examples.
When you beat your olive trees, you shall not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not glean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow.
See, what this law is basically saying is that when you pick the fruits of your tree or vineyard, don't take everything for yourself. Leave some for the others. For the law allows the poor and the foreigner to go over your tree to take what you have left. So be generous. And in so doing, the land became also a safer place, for the stranger and the poor would not go hungry, and they will not need to steal, because hunger can drive a person to take what does not belong to him. So these are great laws that show us that all our actions, all our doing should always be done with the thought of our neighbors. Okay, no man is an island. We all live with each other and influence one another. We have a great responsibility in how we interact with the people of this world. This is what the law says. And this same principle is applied to other laws. For example, concerning building codes. The law goes even there. The Mosaic law goes as far as looking at the way we build our house, even the roof and so on, the balcony and so on. See Deuteronomy 22:8. See how we should be concerned again for others.
When you build a new house, then you shall make a fortifications for your roof, that you may not bring guilt of bloodshed on your household, if anyone falls from it.
See, the Israelites were to enter the land and they were to build houses. They had to think not only of their family, but of the safety of visiting neighbors. And what this law tells us again is that we must be responsible citizens, protecting the lives of our families as well as the lives of those living next to us. The same principle is given to us in the law of the Messiah that is in the New Testament. We find it in Romans 12:11, where we read,
Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love, in honor, giving preference to one another, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord.
Not lagging in diligence, that is, not being slothful or negligent toward the others. While this law pertains to those brothers and sisters in the faith, the same concept, the same principle of care should be extended to all. First, of course, the house of God, and then the others. And so we have a great responsibility towards those who surround us. We cannot be lukewarm or indifferent to one another. It is against the law of God. And the law does not only apply to our friendly neighbors, but refers to those with whom we may have developed some hard feelings. Suppose someone insulted you or gossiped against you and has tainted your reputation. If you find out that this person is in need and you happen to have what it takes to help that person, are you going to help this person? Or if you find something that belongs to a person who has injured you, would you just leave it on the floor and keep it off your way, or would you bring it back to that person? What does the law say about this? Let us go back to Deuteronomy 22 and read verse 4.
You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down along the road and hide yourself from them. You shall surely help him lift them up again.
Here, your brother is everybody and anybody, the one you love and the one you must learn to love. We tend to be nice with those that are nice with us, but love and respect should not be selective. And concerning the question as to who our brother and our neighbors are, you know that Yeshua answered this question in the parable of the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10, and he does it in a powerful way. This parable was given to answer a question from someone who supposedly knew the law well. So this one asked Yeshua, who is my brother? Who is my brother? To him, Yeshua answers very simply and with a parable. It is the story of a man who was left dead by some thieves. But as guilty as these thieves were, we read of others who were also very guilty. For they saw the injured man, yet they did not do anything. We read in Luke chapter 10, verses 31-32. See what it says. Now by chance,
a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side.
The priest and the Levite, the two we read about in Deuteronomy 22, who were supposed to know the law and teach it to others, they were the ones who just passed by and who end up not helping the victim. A Samaritan actually does. A Samaritan, one who was at the time, an enemy of Israel. The Samaritans were at odds with Israel. So there was a great animosity existing between the Samaritan and the Jews. A Samaritan would be the last person one would think of getting help from. Yet, in this parable, that Samaritan is the one who helps that Jewish person, while the priest and the Levite, the professional religious workers, lend no support at all. At the end of the parable, Jesus asks a question in verse 36-37.
So which of these three do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And he said, He who showed mercy on him. Then Yeshua said to him, Go and do likewise.
Our neighbor then is not only those we love or those who are lovable. It could be those that we count even as our enemies. And so Yeshua says, go and do likewise. Love and serve. And there are some very interesting laws concerning also back in the Mosaic law concerning the order of things. We live in a world where things can degenerate quite rapidly. And these laws in our Bible help us to follow a straight line, a straight path. Consider the one found in Deuteronomy 22, verse 5. See what it says.
A woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God.
There are great principles just in this one verse. A woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man. While today many types of clothing are shared by both men and women, the idea behind this is that one should respect the social laws and standard we are under. It all amounts to respecting your society and our neighbors. Social customs, traditions, and ritual often change with time, and the believer is asked to abide by them. We have the same thing in the law of the Messiah. When Paul says also something quite interesting in 1 Corinthians 11:14, he says, does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a dishonor to him? The main issue here is not the hair. Long hair in itself is not bad. The Nazarites were ordered to let the hair grow. The issue is the conformity to social laws. We must live with respect to our neighbors and the surrounding social values we should respect as well. Like it was with the Israelites, our action should always be with a thought of love and respect for the others, even if they're not of our faith. And I want to tell you the greatest example concerning social value, the respect of social value, is found in Luke 2:52, where we read, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. The word favor speaks of grace. It speaks of sweetness and loveliness and action that demonstrate respect. Jesus conformed himself to the social values and respected everyone while keeping a life of spiritual separation, of course. Part of his humiliation and subordination was that he conformed with such grace, living in a world full of sin and forever being a lampstand among his brothers. That is a great example for us to follow. Now, back in Deuteronomy 22, we find the same underlying principle in the laws again found in verses 9 to 11. See what it says.
You shall not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. You shall not wear a garment of different sorts, such as wool and linen mixed together.
These verses are verses of wisdom. Okay, not mixing seeds of different material in the garment or using two different animals to plow brings us to respect the distinctive nature of these items and how best to appreciate them. And all this was to train the future priestly nation to walk that straight path and to have a strong sense of reverence for the environment and to understand that in the world they live in and in their own spiritual walk, there's an order established by God. You see, here we have been selecting verses from different chapters to give you a sense of the law, but I encourage you to read the whole law. It's not that long. Afterwards, one will surely get a stronger sense of what this order that is established by God. Now, these laws mentioned above end with a command, and a beautiful one that brings a physical reminder of this spiritual truth. It is the law about the tassels. The tassels. See Deuteronomy 22:12. It says, "You shall make tassels on the four corners of the clothing with which you cover yourselves." What are tassels? Tassels in Hebrews mean twisted thread. Every Jew at that time, and Yeshua as well, wore tassels. What were they for? The explanation is given in Numbers chapter 15, verse 39. "And you shall have," it says, "the tassel, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them." The object of the tassels was to remind the Israelites of the laws of God and to be holy for God. That was a constant reminder. The physical reminder was a springboard to bring them to spiritual truth. It is significant that these tassels actually were blue like the sky, to remind the Israelites to look up. Sometimes we get so absorbed with things in this life that we need a reminder. It is also interesting that the tassels were to be hanging down from the garment, since we tend to keep our eyes looking earthward, right? Downward. There are the tassels. This is where the tassels were, not something to be places on top of our head or out of our sight, something that we might not forget always. And so today we don't have to wear tassels, by the way. Why? We have a much higher reminder. We have the Spirit of God, the Ruach HaKodesh, dwelling in us and always reminding us of the things we do right and the things we do wrong, leading us to higher sanctification day by day, hour by hour. And there's a phrase that comes back many times in this exposition of the law, one that is repeated 8 times from chapter 13 to chapter 24. This is how it goes. "You shall put away the evil from among you." This is what it's at the core of the law. That is what the law is about, what the Word of God is about. If properly applied and understood, it will bring one to put away the evil that is among us. Yes, we live in an evil world, but we always are called to make that distinction. We all live again in the same world, and problems require our attention. So we should put away the evil always among us. And this goes along with another key verse, which we see at the beginning of Deuteronomy 23, verse 14. "For the Lord your God walks in the midst of your camp." This is where the knowledge of the law leads us to holiness, always realizing that the Lord walks among us. And in the same chapter 24, where we drew so many of these laws, are also the laws about divorce. Okay, but here again, a very interesting and exceptional case is presented to us. See Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 to 4. It's all there. See what it says. Well, very complicated. It contains some important principles. Let's begin by reading just the first verse.
"When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes, because he has found some uncleanness in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house."
Here we are presented with an unusual case scenario. So strange that I believe there's some kind of irony here. First, we read that the woman finds no favor in her husband. Now, I want to ask you, since when is marriage considered as a simple relationship based on the husband's feeling? Marriage is for life. It does not depend on the moods of either the husband or the wife. It is a divine institution. God created marriage. At the time, because a wife did not find favor with her husband, he divorced her. That is unacceptable, and the law comes to the rescue of the woman. This is when Moses speaks of a certificate of divorce. A certificate was not easy to get. They had to find a scribe, and they had to find a priest who would not make it easy for the husband. At the same time, going to the priest, it became a public affair. Everyone would know about it. So Moses would make it so complicated that it was better for the husband to stay with his wife. But this is not all that the verse says. Second, we read that the man puts her out of the house. Doesn't the house belong to both of them? This is what marriage is about. All belong to both, but the husband is portrayed as the boss here. This is why the law needed to be put, a new law about divorce. This is why divorce had to be regulated. And third, as the confusion keeps its course, the woman marries another. Did not God say that in marrying they have to become one flesh? And here a third party enters the marriage. Look at verse 2 and 3.
When she has departed from his house and goes and becomes another man's wife, if the latter husband detests her and writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house, or if the latter husband dies who took her as his wife.
Fourth, as the story goes, there's another bill of divorcement and another putting out. See now verse 4 again.
Then her former husband who divorced her must not take her back to be his wife after she has been defiled. For that is an abomination before the Lord, and you shall not bring sin on the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance.
You know, when in the world are you going to find a situation like this? The ridiculousness of the case shows that the marriage institution was reduced to really very low. And so I believe that the scriptures give this example to amplify the measure of confusion that this great institution was dragged into. Because when there's divorce, there's confusion. God said it very clearly, I hate divorce. Here we find two divorces for the same woman. In this example, the woman is seen as the mercy of man and of the society in general. But the Spirit of God does not leave us with this sad example. But right in the next verse, he tells us what a healthy marriage should be. Verse 5, see what it says.
When a man has taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war or be charged with any business. He shall be free at home 1 year and bring happiness to his wife, whom he has taken.
Marriage is so important to God that he gives a full year of vacation to the one who marries, as we have previously seen. Next, in contrast to man's feeling in verse 1, where the marriage stood on his favor, here God tells us that what he ought to do instead. He said that he should bring happiness to his wife. That's a commandment here. It is in verse 5 where God tells the man how he should behave towards his wife. Man should not seek his happiness, but his wife's happiness. This is what we are told 4 times in the New Testament. Ephesians 5:25, 5:28, 5:33, and Colossians 3:19, that husbands should love their wives. We are not told that the woman actually should love their husband here, because a woman is a responder. She's a responder of the love that she gets from her husband. This is what the law of the Messiah says in that one verse that we read in Colossians 3:19. Husband, love your wives and do not be bitter towards them. Yes, it's not always easy, when it comes to conflicts, but with God, it becomes a reality. This is all the time we have for today. We'll keep on this precious subject of divorce next time we meet. May the Lord bless you.
Hallelujah, Adonai, kol goyim. Shabechu kol ha'umim. Ki gafar aleinu hasdom. Emet Adonai le'olam, hallelujah, hallelujah. חסדו, ואמת אדוני